If you had told me a year ago that I'd be writing this post, I probably would have laughed. I used to think stories like this only happened to people with chaotic families or reality TV levels of dysfunction. But I guess when money, pride, and jealousy all end up at the same dinner table, it's only a matter of time before someone flips the whole thing over. My name's Kevin, I'm 29, and this all started because I wanted to do something nice for my dad. He's a good man. Not perfect, but solid, dependable. The kind of guy who never bought himself anything over $50 unless it was for the family. He wore the same watch for 18 years, drove a beat-up old Honda Civic until the tires were balding and the AC wheezed like a smoker, and still found ways to surprise us with new bikes at Christmas or last-minute beach trips when we were kids. He worked 2 jobs for most of my childhood, warehouse forklift by day, diner cook on weekends. All that so my younger brother Jason and I could go to good schools and not worry about stuff he had to worry about when he was our age. I got lucky in life. Worked hard. Yeah, but I also caught a few breaks. A startup I joined right out of college took off, and I cashed out with stock options that made my head spin. I didn't go crazy with the money. No sports cars or watches or celebrity nonsense. But I always knew that when the time was right, I wanted to get something for my dad. Something huge. Something that would make up for all those years he shrugged off his own wants so we could have everything. And that something ended up being a 2023 Porsche 911 Carrera GTS. Midnight blue, tan leather interior, manual transmission because the man insists real cars have sticks. This wasn't just a luxury car, it was his dream car. I'd heard him mention it once in passing, years ago, when one drove by us at a red light. That's the one, he said under his breath, like a kid whispering about a toy he knew he'd never get. I never forgot. So I bought it. Paid cash. No loan, no lease. Had it delivered right to his driveway on his birthday with a giant red bow on top, like something out of a commercial. His reaction? I wish I could bottle that moment and keep it forever. He just stood there, eyes wide, hand over his mouth like he couldn't breathe. Then he looked at me, blinking back tears, and said, "You shouldn't have." But I did, because he deserved it. We spent that whole day going for a drive down the coast. I let him take the wheel the entire time. The man was giddy, like, laughing randomly as we rounded corners, pointing out every feature on the console, even praising the way the car smelled. He looked 20 years younger in that driver's seat. Now, here's where I have to explain a bit about my brother, Jason. He's 26, and if I had to sum him up in one word, it would be frustrated. He's not a bad person, per se. But he's got this chip on his shoulder the size of a truck. He's the kind of guy who'll get mad if someone else orders the same drink as him, like they're trying to copy him. Always sees himself as the underdog, the overlooked one, even though we were raised the same way, in the same house, by the same parents. Jason and I haven't exactly been close for the past few years. We talk, sure. Family dinners, birthdays, the usual. But there's tension. Always has been. I think it started after college. He struggled to find steady work, bounced between retail and short-lived gigs in marketing, while I climbed fast in the tech world. Every time I got a promotion, he'd make some passive-aggressive comment like, "Must be nice to have connections," or "Some of us have to actually earn stuff." I never rubbed anything in his face. I kept things low-key, but I could feel the resentment simmering under the surface, like he was waiting for an excuse to boil over. When I bought the Porsche, I didn't expect him to be thrilled, but I didn't expect what actually happened either. At first, he played it cool. At Dad's birthday party, he gave me a half smile, a backhanded compliment. Wow, man. Real subtle. Gotta love a gift that screams, "Look at me." I laughed it off. So did Dad. But I noticed he didn't come outside once to look at the car. Not even for pictures. Later that night, I overheard him talking to our cousin in the kitchen, voice just low enough to think I wouldn't hear. He always has to one-up everyone. Like, "Congrats, you're rich." We get it. I told myself to let it go. He was probably just venting, feeling small in the shadow of something big. I figured with time, he'd come around. But then little things started to happen. Nothing huge at first. Dad mentioned once that the passenger seat had some mysterious scuff marks. He brushed it off. Must have been the detailer. A few days later, the fuel tank was lower than expected after Dad left it parked for days untouched. Weird, but maybe he forgot to fill it up? I started to get a bad feeling in my gut, but I didn't want to be that guy, the one who accuses his own brother of something without proof. So I stayed quiet. until I noticed the tire pressure warning light blinking when I was over at Dad's place. He didn't know what it meant, just that the dash kept pinging. I checked the tires. The front right was visibly worn on the outer edge, like it had taken a hard corner one too many times. That's when the pieces started to click into place. I casually asked Dad if he'd let Jason take the Porsche out for a spin. He blinked, confused. No, he hasn't asked. And even if he did, I wouldn't have said yes. Not yet. He's not. Careful. Something in his voice told me he knew something was off too. He just didn't want to believe it. So I decided to run a little test. I bought a cheap Bluetooth GPS tracker and discreetly placed it in the trunk lining. Nothing fancy, just enough to ping my phone whenever the car moved. I didn't tell Dad. I didn't tell anyone. Just wanted to be sure I wasn't imagining things. 3 nights later, I got a ping at 1:14 a.m. The Porsche was moving. I watched the little dot on my phone drive out of the neighborhood, hit the freeway, then loop into downtown. It stopped near a rooftop bar I knew Jason had posted about before on Instagram. My stomach twisted. This wasn't a quick joyride. This was planned. The car didn't return home until 3:39 a.m. I didn't sleep a second that night. I waited until the next day. When Dad was out running errands, I stopped by the house, opened the app, and pulled the GPS log. The Porsche had been taken out 4 times that week alone, each time between midnight and 3 a.m. Always the same route, downtown, then back. And I hadn't said a word yet, because part of me still hoped there was an explanation. But deep down, I already knew. And when I finally confronted Jason, what he said made my blood run cold. The confrontation happened on a Sunday afternoon. One of those lazy days where the whole family somehow ends up in the same house. Dad barbecuing in the backyard, Mom making lemonade in the kitchen, and Jason sprawled across the living room couch like he owned the place, glued to his phone, legs dangling over the armrest. I'd been holding it in all week, debating whether to talk to Dad first or give Jason a chance to come clean. But after that last GPS ping, I couldn't stay quiet any longer. So I walked up, calm but firm, and said, "Hey Jason, can we talk outside for a second?" He didn't look up, just let out a groan. "About what?" "You'll see." He sighed like I'd asked him to carry a mattress up 3 flights of stairs. Then he stood and followed me out to the front yard. We stood by the driveway, a few feet from the Porsche, which still looked pristine if you didn't know what to look for. I could feel my heartbeat picking up, my jaw tightening. I pulled out my phone and opened the tracker app. "You want to tell me why this car was driving around downtown at 2 a.m. last Thursday?" Jason blinked. "What?" I turned the screen so he could see the map. The little timestamps, the GPS trail. His eyes flicked over it for a second too long. Then he scoffed and leaned back on one foot. "You're seriously tracking your own dad's car?" "No. I'm tracking my gift. That I bought with my money. For his birthday. And somehow it's being taken out in the middle of the night without his knowledge." "You want to explain that?" He crossed his arms, trying to play it cool. "So what? You're accusing me of stealing it." "You tell me." Jason looked off toward the street like he was weighing how much of the truth to admit. Then he shrugged. "Okay, fine. I took it out a couple times. Big deal. It's not like I wrecked it." My stomach twisted at how casually he said it. Like it was a borrowed hoodie, not a 6-figure sports car he didn't even ask permission to touch. "You took it out without asking," I said, voice sharper now. "You lied to Dad. You drove his dream car like it was your toy. At 2 in the morning? Are you insane?" He rolled his eyes. "Relax. I was careful. I just wanted to see what it could do. You act like I crashed it into a wall." I wanted to grab him by the collar and shake some sense into him, but I held back. "You disrespected Dad. And me. That's not just a car. That's 20 years of sacrifice I was trying to honor. You know what he gave up for us. And you just sneak it out like it's nothing." Jason's smirk faltered, just a bit. But then he doubled down. "You think you're better than me because you can afford to blow $100,000 on a birthday gift? Newsflash, Kev, some of us didn't get handed a golden ticket after college. Some of us actually have to struggle. You walk in here acting like the family hero, like you're Saint Kevin the Generous, when really, you just bought yourself a pedestal." I blinked. "You think I did this for me?" He threw his hands up. "It's always been like this. You were Dad's favorite. You got the best grades, the best college, the job, the apartment. And now you're showing off with a Porsche while I'm stuck doing freelance gigs just to scrape by. Forgive me if I wanted to know what it felt like to drive something nice for once." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The sheer entitlement of it. The rewriting of history. He wasn't taking accountability. He was twisting it into some personal injustice. Jason, I said, voice low, I didn't buy that car to show off. I bought it because Dad deserved something he never would have gotten for himself. If you felt jealous, you could have talked to me. But this is betrayal. Plain and simple. He stared at me for a long second. And for a fleeting moment, I thought I saw regret in his eyes. But then he turned and muttered, whatever. It's just a car. Just a car. I walked away before I said something I'd regret. I didn't tell Dad. Not yet. I wanted time to think. Time to figure out how to handle it without blowing up the entire family dynamic. Because despite everything, I still held on to some fragile hope that Jason would come to his senses. That maybe he'd apologize. Maybe he'd get it. But that hope shattered 3 weeks later. It was a Tuesday morning. I was on a video call when my phone started buzzing nonstop. Missed call from Dad. 2 more. Then a text. Kevin, it's the car. Call me ASAP. My stomach dropped. When I called, his voice was shaky. Not panicked, but hollow. It's gone, he said. The car. Someone crashed it. Totaled. I felt like the floor disappeared beneath me. What do you mean totaled? He explained slowly, like he still couldn't believe it himself. Apparently, he woke up early to go for a morning drive. But the car wasn't in the driveway. There were no signs of forced entry, no broken glass, no keys missing from the hook by the door. Then he got a call from the police. The Porsche had been found wrecked against a concrete divider on a side road just outside the city. Driver fled the scene. Witnesses said it happened around 4 a.m. I didn't even need to ask. I knew. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely hear him. Dad? I said slowly. Was Jason home when you woke up? There was a long silence. No, he said. I checked his room. Empty. He came back around 7. Said he went to get breakfast. That confirmed it. I didn't even text Jason. I drove straight to his apartment. I don't remember much about the drive, just the sound of my pulse roaring in my ears. When he opened the door, looking groggy and still wearing last night's clothes, I lost it. You totaled the Porsche. He blinked. What? Don't play dumb. You crashed it. I know it was you. He held up his hands. Okay, calm down. Don't tell me to calm down. You stole that car, again, after I asked you not to touch it. You wrecked it. Do you even understand what you've done? He looked like a deer in headlights. Look, I didn't mean to. It was raining, and I didn't see the turn in time. So you admit it. He slumped down onto the couch. I panicked, all right. I didn't know what to do. I bailed. I figured I don't know, talk to Dad later. Explain it wasn't my fault. It is your fault. I shouted. You had no right to be behind that wheel. None. And now Dad's dream is sitting in a scrapyard because you wanted to feel important for 5 minutes. He didn't respond. I stood there seething. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to make him feel even an ounce of the shame he should have felt. But he just sat there. No tears. No apology. Just blank, useless silence. And that's when I saw it. He didn't feel sorry. He felt cornered. That was the moment everything shifted for me. That was the moment I stopped seeing him as the brother I grew up with and started seeing him for what he really was. A selfish man who thought consequences were optional, as long as he could spin the story afterward. I left without another word. Back at Dad's house, he was still sitting on the porch, looking like someone had punched a hole through his chest. I sat next to him. Neither of us spoke for a long time. Finally, he said, I love that car. Not because of what it was, but because of what it meant. I know. He nodded. I always thought Jason just needed more time to figure himself out. But now, I don't know. Maybe I enabled it. That hit me harder than anything else. Because Dad blaming himself? That wasn't fair. He didn't raise Jason to be like this. Jason chose this path. Over and over. I could have let that be the end of it. I could have mourned the loss, written it off as a mistake, and moved on. But I didn't. Because 2 days later, while I was still working through the insurance mess, I found out something that pushed me over the edge. I was scrolling through Instagram, not even thinking about it. Just muscle memory at that point. And there it was, Jason's story. A video taken the night before the crash. Inside the Porsche. Music blasting. Him laughing with 2 friends. Revving the engine like he was in a race movie. And the caption? Living like a king. That was it. That was the moment I decided he was going to pay. Not just figuratively. Literally. And when I was done, he'd learned that sometimes, kings fall hardest when they build their castles on stolen ground. The week after I saw Jason's Instagram story felt like a fog I couldn't walk out of. I wasn't just angry anymore. I was hollow. I'd been robbed, not just of money or metal, but of something deeper. That car had been a symbol, a thank you, a way to repay Dad for everything he gave us. And Jason had turned it into a toy, wrecked it, then laughed about it online like it was a joke. I didn't show Dad the story. He didn't need that pain. But I saved the video, just in case. The insurance company, of course, wasn't happy. Since the registered owner was Dad, and he wasn't the one driving, or even aware the car had been taken, the process became a slow, bureaucratic nightmare. They needed police reports, proof of unauthorized use, statements. And even then, there was a real possibility they'd deny the claim. Joyriding by a family member isn't always covered. That meant Dad could be on the hook for tens of thousands in damages on a car he never misused and didn't even get to enjoy. I knew what this would do to him. I knew how much guilt he already carried. So I stepped in, took over the process, hired a lawyer, and started building a case that placed every bit of blame where it belonged, Jason. But while that fight dragged on in the background, my life started to unravel. The stress seeped into everything. My work performance tanked. I missed meetings, fumbled presentations, couldn't concentrate. I started snapping at friends, canceling plans, ghosting people who asked if I was okay. I told myself I was just handling things, that once it all settled, I'd be fine. But I wasn't fine. One night, I was sitting alone in my apartment, empty takeout box beside me, laptop open but untouched, when I got a call from Mom. She'd been quiet through all of this, supportive in her own way, but reserved. That night, though, she sounded different. "Kev," she said gently, "your dad won't say it, but he's not doing great." I swallowed hard. "I know. He's not angry at you," she added. "Just sad. Defeated. I've never seen him like this. He hasn't driven since the accident. Won't even get behind the wheel of the Corolla." That hit harder than I expected. Dad had loved driving. It was his escape, his therapy, and now he was afraid to even touch a steering wheel? "Maybe you should come over," she said. "Not to talk about Jason. Just come have dinner." I did. That Friday, I showed up with groceries and cooked him one of his favorites, lemon pepper chicken with roasted potatoes, the way he used to make it when Mom worked late. He barely spoke at first, but after a while, the silence softened. We talked about dumb movies, neighborhood gossip, football, and for the first time in weeks, I saw a flicker of light in his eyes. That dinner became a weekly thing. Then twice a week. I started working from their place occasionally, helping Dad with little home repairs or errands. It didn't fix everything, but it helped. And slowly, I started to feel a little less broken myself. Meanwhile, Jason? He disappeared. No calls, no texts, no family dinners. He ghosted us all like he'd never existed. I assumed he was embarrassed, or just cowardly. I didn't care. He'd made his choices. But then Mom found out from one of her church friends that Jason had been bragging to people, telling them his idiot brother overreacted about a stupid car, and that the insurance would cover it anyway. He even hinted that I'd probably buy Dad another one because I love playing savior. That's when something shifted in me again. The rage was still there, sure, but now it was cold, focused. I started planning. First, I dug into Jason's finances. I still had access to some shared family records from years ago, stuff we'd used to co-sign loans for him when he was trying to build credit. I found out he was behind on payments for a used BMW he'd financed 2 years ago. Credit cards maxed. One account sent to collections. Rent overdue by a month. He was broke. And cocky. A dangerous combo. Next, I called my lawyer and asked what my legal options were. We reviewed the police report, the Instagram video, the GPS logs. The lawyer nodded slowly, tapping a pen against his notepad. "You've got a strong civil case," he said, "especially if your dad signs an affidavit stating he never gave permission." "He will." We filed a lawsuit for damages, not just for the totaled vehicle, but for fraud, unauthorized use, and the resulting emotional distress inflicted on Dad. It was a long shot for full compensation, but it wasn't about the money anymore. It was about the message. But I didn't stop there. While all that churned in the background, I focused on rebuilding. I took a leave of absence from work, officially for mental health reasons. At first, I felt guilty, like I was slacking. But truthfully, I needed it. I started going to therapy twice a week. For the first time in my life, I admitted out loud how much pressure I'd felt being the good son, the responsible one, the unspoken glue in a family full of cracks. I talked about how I'd buried my resentment every time Jason got a free pass, every time he played victim and still ended up with sympathy, while I carried the weight in silence. It was cathartic, painful, but real. My therapist asked me once, "When's the last time you did something for yourself?" I didn't have an answer, so I made a list, not of tasks, but of things I'd always wanted to do but kept putting off. Small things, personal things. Get back into photography. Learn to cook something new every week. Start running again. Reconnect with old friends. I bought a used DSLR camera and started going on weekend photo walks. Urban stuff, mostly, alleyways, graffiti, odd little pockets of the city people overlooked. It gave me peace, focus, a sense of control I hadn't felt in months. And with that came clarity. One evening, after a particularly long run through the park, I found myself sitting on a bench, drenched in sweat, staring up at the orange streaks of sunset. My phone buzzed. It was Dad. Just one sentence. "Thanks for not giving up on me." I stared at it for a long time. And for the first time since this whole mess started, I cried. Not out of sadness, but relief. Gratitude. Because despite everything Jason had taken from us, we were still here. Still family. Still standing. That night, I made a decision. I was going to buy Dad a new car. But not as a replacement. That Porsche was a moment, and nothing could truly replicate it. This would be something new. A symbol not of the past, but of the future. Something to remind him, and myself, that we could rebuild. That we had rebuilt. I started researching. Quietly. Carefully. I looked for something elegant, but grounded. Fast but not flashy. Something he could drive every day and still smile. And I found it. A 2024 Audi S5 Sportback. Sleek, powerful, refined. Midnight blue again. Because some symbols are worth repeating. But this time, there was no bow. No crowd. No spectacle. Just me pulling into the driveway one morning, keys in hand, and Dad stepping out onto the porch, confused. "What's this?" he asked, walking up. I handed him the fob. "Yours." His brow furrowed. "Kevin, it's not about the Porsche," I said. "It's about you. Still you. Still worth it." He didn't cry this time. But he didn't have to. I could see everything in his face. The weight lifting, even just a little. And then, just as he started walking around the car, admiring the lines, the mail arrived. An envelope, hand-delivered. Thick paper. My name embossed on the front. It was from Jason. Inside was a single sheet of paper. A note, scrawled in his handwriting. "Hope you're happy. You ruined everything. I'm done trying to fix this." And behind it, a copy of the lawsuit. Stamped. Served. He was officially contesting it. Which meant everything was about to get messy, eh? But I wasn't afraid. Not anymore. I'd already hit bottom. And I'd already started to rise. Now, it was time for him to fall. The lawsuit filing shook Jason harder than he expected. Maybe he thought I was bluffing. Maybe he assumed Dad would convince me to drop it. But when he got served officially, with his full legal name stamped on the envelope, things stopped feeling like a family squabble and started feeling like what it really was, a war. He called me that night. I let it go to voicemail. The message started with a weak attempt at guilt. "Kev, come on, man. This is overboard. We're family." Then it shifted to blame. "You're the one turning this into a disaster. It was a mistake. You seriously want to drag me through court for a car?" And finally, desperation. "If you drop the suit, I'll do whatever you want, all right? Just don't let this ruin everything." But it already had. What Jason didn't understand, what he never understood, was that this wasn't about a car. It was about 20-something years of being pushed, pulled, and guilt-tripped into silence. It was about watching my dad, the strongest, kindest man I knew, walk around like he was the one who failed. It was about crossing a line and laughing as you stood on the other side, daring someone to hold you accountable. Well, I was holding him now, and I wasn't letting go. After that voicemail, I started building. Not just legally, but emotionally, socially, strategically. First, I met with my lawyer again, this time with Dad present. It wasn't easy to get him to come. He didn't want to choose sides. But I told him, gently, that this wasn't about favoritism, it was about truth. About protecting what was right. Dad sat through most of the meeting in silence, hands folded, eyes down. When my lawyer asked if he'd be willing to submit a written affidavit stating he never gave Jason permission to drive the car, Dad hesitated. "Are you sure about this?" he asked me quietly. "I'm sure." He looked tired. Not physically, something deeper. But after a long pause, he nodded. Then so am I. That moment felt like turning a key in a locked door. Like something between us had finally realigned. With his affidavit and the police report in hand, our case became much stronger. My lawyer said we had a solid shot at partial reimbursement, plus potential damages if the judge saw fit. More importantly, it meant Jason would finally face consequences. Not jail time, but a serious financial reckoning. Still, lawsuits take time. Months, sometimes years. So while the legal wheels turned slowly, I worked on something faster. Something more surgical. I started with my Uncle Richard. He's Dad's older brother. A no-nonsense kind of guy who runs a mid-sized auto repair chain in the city. He's always had a soft spot for me, mostly because I helped him revamp his business's online scheduling platform a few years back. So when I showed up at his shop one afternoon with a coffee and a favor, he raised an eyebrow, but listened. "I need to know if Jason's been around," I said, asking for help with the car or talking about anything related to the crash. Uncle Richard scratched his jaw. He came in a week after the accident. Wanted to know how much it would cost to quietly fix some suspension damage. Didn't say what car, just asked hypothetically. Seemed twitchy. "Did he mention anything about me? Or Dad?" "Only that you were being dramatic, and that the whole thing would blow over if you weren't so stuck up." I exhaled slowly. He still thinks this is a game. "Well," Richard said, folding his arms, "maybe it's time someone showed him how games end." He didn't say more, but I could tell he was on my side. Next, I reached out to an old friend of Jason's, Noah. They'd grown up together, but drifted apart after high school. Noah and I had always been friendly, and I'd heard he was working freelance in graphic design now. I offered to buy him lunch. Over burgers and fries at a downtown diner. I laid it out. "I'm not asking you to spy or betray anyone. I just need to know, what's Jason saying about all this?" Noah hesitated, then sighed. "Look, man, I haven't talked to him in a while, but he called me 2 weeks ago, asking if I knew any affordable lawyers. Said his psycho brother was trying to bankrupt him." I raised an eyebrow. "Psycho." His words, not mine, Noah said quickly. He also said something about faking documents. Like maybe claiming he had permission to drive the car, or that it was a gift to him. I stared at him. "You're sure?" He was venting, rambling. "But yeah," he said if he could prove intent, the lawsuit might get dropped. That was dangerous. Because while Jason wasn't exactly brilliant, he was slippery. If he could convince a judge that I'd gifted the car to both Dad and him, or that we had some sort of verbal agreement, the case could get muddied fast. So I needed proof. Not just of the theft, but of his mindset. Enter Plan B. I went home, pulled up the Instagram video he'd posted the night of the crash, and started screen recording. Then I dug through his profile and took screenshots of every post, every comment, every flex, where he mentioned the Porsche, like it was his. I also pulled GPS logs from the tracker I'd installed, organized the timestamps, and paired them with text logs I'd sent Dad during those nights. The ones where I asked if he'd driven the car, and he said no. I compiled everything into a clean, chronological PDF and gave it to my lawyer. "This," I said, "is who we're dealing with." He whistled softly. "This is damning." Good. But the biggest move came next. I started reaching out to Jason's landlord, utility companies, and even a few debt collectors listed on his credit report, which I'd accessed through an old family-linked credit monitoring account we both forgot existed. I didn't impersonate anyone. I didn't break laws. But I asked questions, very specific ones, about payment plans, timelines, delinquency notices. The picture I painted was bleak. Jason was 3 months behind on rent. He owed nearly $6,000 across multiple credit cards. His BMW had been repossessed last month, and his phone line was flagged for possible disconnection. It was all falling apart, which is exactly what I needed. Because I had a plan. If I could time everything right, the lawsuit, the evidence, the financial pressure, I could force him into a corner. Not out of cruelty, but justice. And once he was there, I'd give him a choice. Pay what you owe, or lose everything else you're clinging to. But I wasn't done. Because one thing still bugged me. That Instagram video. The one he posted before crashing the Porsche. It had been deleted the next morning. Scrubbed. Like it never happened. But I'd saved a copy. And now, I had an idea. I contacted a friend who worked in digital media. Asked if he could enhance the video, stabilize it, clean up the audio. He did. And guess what we found? Jason's voice, loud and clear, saying, No way my brother would ever let me take this out. But what he doesn't know won't hurt him. That clip was gold. No, platinum. I had it time-stamped, watermarked, and submitted as part of our legal discovery package. And still I waited. Quiet. Patient. Because the setup wasn't complete until one final piece fell into place. It happened the following week, when I went to drop off groceries at my parents' place. Dad was in the backyard, fiddling with the garden hose. When he saw me, he waved me over. Got a letter today, he said. From Jason. My stomach tightened. What did it say? He handed it to me without a word. It was short. Sloppy handwriting. No return address. Dad, I know Kev's feeding you lies. I never meant to hurt you. Please don't testify. I can't handle court. I'm broke. I'm scared. Please just tell them I had permission and this can all go away. He read it too. And he looked so tired. But when he met my eyes, there was steel in his voice. I'm not lying for him, he said. Not this time. And that was it. The setup was complete. The car was gone. The story was told. The truth was documented. All that remained was the fallout. And I was ready to watch it unfold. The court date was set for the second Tuesday in May. It had been nearly 6 months since the crash, but it felt like 6 years. So much had changed since that night. Inside me, inside my family, inside our relationships. The man I was back then, furious, reactive, flailing to keep the family from falling apart, had been replaced by someone sharper, quieter, more resolved. I wasn't seeking drama anymore. I wanted justice. Clean, deliberate, and undeniable. Jason tried to delay the hearing twice. Claimed illness. Claimed his lawyer needed more time. Claimed emotional distress. The judge wasn't moved. We had evidence, dates, signatures, timestamps. And most importantly, we had the truth. The morning of the hearing, I showed up early with my lawyer and dad. We sat quietly in the hallway outside the courtroom, not saying much. He looked tired but composed, dressed in his Sunday best, pressed slacks, leather shoes, and the same watch he'd worn every day for 20 years. I noticed the tan on his face from working in the yard again. He'd started driving again too. The new Audi had finally become part of his routine. It wasn't the Porsche, but it was his. And no one had taken that from him. Jason arrived 20 minutes late, eyes sunken, suit wrinkled like it had been crumpled in the back seat of someone else's car. He had a public defender with him, probably because every other lawyer had demanded a retainer he couldn't afford. I didn't look at him when he walked past. And he didn't look at me. Inside the courtroom, everything felt smaller than I imagined. No dramatic chandeliers, no echoing gavel strikes. Just a room with beige walls, flickering fluorescent lights, and a judge with no patience for excuses. The hearing was brief, 2 hours, tops, but every second felt like a lifetime. My lawyer opened with the timeline. The gift of the Porsche to my father, the GPS logs, the police report, the footage of the crash site. Then he played the Instagram video, enhanced, subtitled, damning. No way my brother would ever let me take this out. But what he doesn't know won't hurt him. Jason shifted in his seat, arms folded tight, leg bouncing like a jackhammer. Then came Dad's statement. He stood, cleared his throat, and said in a quiet but steady voice, I never gave my son Jason permission to drive the car. Not once. I didn't know he'd taken it until it was already gone. I don't blame him for being lost in life. But I can't protect him from what he did. Not this time. And then he sat down. Jason's defense was predictably weak. His lawyer claimed there was verbal ambiguity around access to the car, that in a family dynamic, ownership can be interpreted loosely, and that emotions were running high on all sides. Jason never looked up during any of it. When asked if he had any response, he mumbled, I didn't think it would be such a big deal. The judge didn't even blink. Before issuing her ruling, she asked a final question, one I didn't expect. To the plaintiff, what remedy are you seeking? Financial restitution? Civil penalties? Or something else? I stood up. My voice was calm. I'm seeking accountability. I paid for that car to honor my father. Jason destroyed that. I don't want to bankrupt him. I want him to learn. And to pay back what he cost, dollar for dollar. No shortcuts. No handouts. The judge nodded. Her ruling was swift. Jason was ordered to pay $76,000 in damages, covering the market value of the totaled vehicle after the partial insurance payout I finally secured, plus legal fees and emotional distress. He was given 30 days to begin payments, or the court would authorize wage garnishment, asset seizure, and a lien against his credit for the full amount. There was no shouting, no explosion, no family breakdown in the courtroom. But Jason's face, when the judge read that number aloud, was pure defeat, like someone had just read his obituary in real time. We left the courtroom in silence. Outside, the sun was warm, the air clear. Dad reached over and put a hand on my shoulder. "You did the right thing," he said. I nodded, but didn't say anything. Not yet. Jason didn't call that night. Or the next. A week passed. Then two. And then, on a random Tuesday morning, I got a notification. $600. Bank transfer. From Jason. No note. No explanation. It was a start. The payments trickled in, slower than the court ordered, but steady. I let my lawyer handle the enforcement. I didn't want to think about it anymore. That part of the story was closing. But there was still fallout. Word got around. Our extended family, who'd always treated Jason like they misunderstood one, started asking questions. At first, he tried to spin it. Kevin exaggerated everything. Dad overreacted. But the evidence was out there now. The video. The wreck. The ruling. You can't lie your way out of a legal judgment. At our cousin's wedding that summer, I walked in and saw Jason sitting alone at a side table, scrolling his phone, looking like a ghost of the guy he used to pretend to be. A few people gave him polite nods. Most avoided him altogether. I didn't speak to him, but I wasn't angry. I was done. In the months that followed, life finally settled into something normal again. I got back into work, slowly but surely. The late-night stress was gone. The therapy sessions became less frequent. Dad and I went for drives again. Nothing flashy, just weekend trips to the coast, stopping at quiet diners like we used to. One Saturday afternoon, we pulled over by an overlook and just sat, watching the waves crash against the rocks. Dad looked over at me. "You know," he said, "I always worried you'd carry too much." I glanced at him. "What do you mean?" "You've always felt like you had to hold things together. Make peace. Fix what others break. It's a heavy way to live." I didn't respond right away. Just listened to the gulls circling overhead. "I guess I got tired of fixing," I said finally. "Some things need to break, or they'll never change." He nodded. "And sometimes, you have to let them stay broken." The wind picked up. We sat there for a while longer, saying nothing. Later that evening, I got a final message from Jason. "Hope you're happy. I lost my apartment. My credit's trashed. Can't even get a loan for a used car. You win." I stared at the message for a long moment, then deleted it. Because I didn't win. I survived. I protected what mattered. And that wasn't revenge. That was justice. And as I stood in the kitchen later that night, watching Dad walk in from the garage with grease on his hands and a smile on his face, I realized something. You don't get to choose your family, but you do get to choose what you tolerate. And me? I chose peace over silence. And the sound of that engine, purring steady in the driveway, was louder than any apology Jason never gave. Some lessons come with a price tag. Jason just didn't know the bill had his name on it.